Alright, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to game number 4 of the first World Chess Championship match in 1886 between Wilhelm Steinitz and Johannes Zukertort. That was played in New York for a pot of $800, I believe. As you can see, Zukertort has a lead of 1 point so far, draws not counting in this game. In this match, as it was a first to 10 wins match. So Zukertort has a lead of a point. He won the last 2 games in a row, whilst Steinitz won the first game of the match. Okay, Steinitz has the white pieces and will be looking for a comeback victory in this game, or at the very least not to concede another point here. So Steinitz opens with e4, with e5, which is just crazy, quite inventive, quite genius. Knight f3, with knight c6, with bishop e5, going for the Rue Lopez from Steinitz, which is of course the first time that this opening has been employed in a World Championship match, as Zukertort, with his 2 white games, went for d4 and the Slav defense was played, whilst Steinitz in his previous white game played the Scotch 4 knights. So we have knight f6, the Berlin defense, which, you know, at the time was probably quite new, but nowadays it's not very exciting. We have castles, takes, rook e1, and knight d6. We have knight takes, rook takes, bishop e7. All of this is pretty well-known theory at this point. We have bishop f1 and then castles by black. So both sides are now castled. And the fundamental, I guess, difference is that white has 1 developed piece, whilst black has 2. But the 1 developed piece that white has is very good, which is why you can see that white has such an advantage, well, a significant advantage, according to the engine. With d4 taking some more space, bishop f6 kicking the rook back to e1. Rook e8, trying to trade off the very powerful rook and just prevent him from having an open file to himself. We have the rook trade after c3, knight f5, just bringing the knight to a more active square, maybe with the intention of pressuring this pawn, so c4 can't be played at any point, or preventing bishop e3, and just the knight just looks good here. It's a better square than d6, certainly. So bishop f4, pressuring this pawn a little, and again, it's just a nice active diagonal for the bishop to be on. With d6 blocking, kind of blunting the force of the bishop would be the term. And we have knight d2. Just developing the knight, general developing move, bishop e6, bishop d3, attacking this knight. Whether or not Steinitz intends to trade them off, I'm not sure, but it's quite a nice looking knight in all fairness. Zukertort clearly thought that Steinitz did have the intention of trading off the bishop for the knight, and he clearly did not want that to happen, so he played knight h4. Here we have knight e4, just a very nice square for the knight to be on. Maybe thinking about trading the knight for this bishop. Maybe not thinking about that. I don't know. It probably wouldn't be too good of an idea to trade the knight for this bishop, because this bishop is not that good, and this knight is great. So I personally wouldn't, but we have bishop d2. d5, just taking some more space in the center, kicking the knight out of its very nice square on the e4, though the knight looks even nicer on c5, to be honest, so maybe it didn't work for Zukertort there. Brings the bishop back to defend this pawn, and immediately what we can say is that in this position, this doesn't look too good for the player with the black pieces. Steinitz, I think, has got a very nice position for a game where, at the very least, he should try to avoid losing, because it's very easy, once you lose 3 games in a row, to tilt and stop playing good and just completely lose momentum and crash and not be able to do well. So we have Queen e3 from Steinitz, just setting up this battery pointing at nothing, but it looks nice, and he intends to, I imagine, play Rook e1 in the future to take control of the e-file. With b6, kicking this knight out of c5, knight b3. We have Queen d6, I assume attempting to just take control of this diagonal and pressure the h2 pawn. Queen e8 check, knight f8 blocking, then Rook e1 taking full control over the e-file. With bishop e7 here, I'd be a bit tempted to play bishop e6 to disconnect the communication between rook and queen, though after saying that I do in fact realise that the rook would hang, so it wouldn't actually be worth the the small advantage you'd get from disconnecting the rook and the queen. So bishop e7 is played and the queen retreats. We have knight e6, just bringing the knight back to a nicer square, and also just closing the e-file for this absolute unit that's staring down it. So Queen f3 is played. Probably with the intention of playing Queen f5 in the future to go after the h7 pawn. I don't know why else you would play Queen f3. And indeed he does go for Queen f5. Now Zukertort, being the future seer that he is, saw that if he had in fact played anything other than that move, he would have lost the game. So as a future seer, he managed to avoid it. Very impressive stuff. We have bishop f4, just attacking the queen and forcing the queen somewhere else. I mean, really, the queen has to go to d7 or c6. So Zukertort chooses c6 for his queen to avoid a queen trade, which is fair and reasonable because white has a very strong position in this game. So we have knight d2. We have bishop c8, just trying to kick the queen somewhere else. So the queen goes to h5. We have g6, just again harassing the queen. Queen e2 is played. We have knight e6, once again bringing the knight to a better square and preventing the queen from seeing the back rank. We have bishop to g3, which just moves the bishop so that it can't be taken by the knight, and also defends both these pawns, solidifies the bishop in a protected position where you're not going to have to move it unless a pawn attacks it. So we have queen back, knight f3, c5, attempting to undermine the center that Steinitz has built up. And Steinitz allows the center to be undermined in exchange for this hanging pawn structure here and the isolated pawn here that black now has to deal with. Thankfully it's an isolated A pawn, which is the easiest isolated pawn to deal with. We have knight e5, just putting the knight on a very nice square where it's defended thrice, and yeah, you're never getting rid of the knight, basically. And it's just an annoyance forever. So we have bishop g7 here. Rook d1, just pressuring the d5 pawn and preventing d4 from happening. I mean, it doesn't fully prevent it, but I mean, you're not going to play d4 anyway, really. With bishop d7, just trying to get the bishop developed. Probably he's coming for a4 because this is the 1800s and they're pretty monkey-brained in chess. So he goes queen f3, just trying to go after the f7 pawn, get a checkmate. But Zukertort is a little bit of a good player, so he does not allow that to occur. We have knight takes c4. The idea clearly being, this is, I mean, the engine hates it, and I don't understand what the idea is. I mean, I guess the idea from Steinitz is that it's pinned to the queen, but unfortunately, if you take the queen, you just get mated on the back rank. So that doesn't happen. He takes the knight back. We have rook takes d8, knight takes d8, and the queen is defended. So queen e2 is played, and knight e6, and Steinitz resigned. So in summary, essentially, what happened in this game is what happens to a lot of people who's people like me who really enjoy some very pretty, flashy tactics, and realized that the tactic that they were employing did not work. Steinitz went from, in the span of a move, being, well, in a span of, yeah, like two moves or so, he went from being in a very nice position, in a couple of moves, went from being in a very nice position. I mean, here, like, yes, admittedly, the engine thinks that this is slightly better for black, but this still looks like a very nice position for white, for me. And of course, if we go earlier in the game, throughout most of this game, Steinitz had the better position, was the one pressing for an advantage, was the one who was trying to win. But Steinitz just completely hallucinated that there was some kind of tactic in this position, and just took the pawn. Which is a move that I don't understand at all, because it doesn't, like, I don't get what the point is. Maybe, I mean, it's a little complicated to calculate, but, like, unless Zukertort had, like, 20 seconds left on its clock, I wouldn't understand playing this. But even then, it would be a bit of a risky, it would be far too risky to play in a World Championship match. And this is the 1800s, when they had, like, 2 hours to play 50 moves. So I highly doubt Zukertort was low on time here. Anyway, yeah, this is, Steinitz was pressing the whole game at the better advantage, in a better position, pretty much the whole game, and then just threw it away with a completely unsubstantiated sacrifice, and resigned 2 moves after. So that's the game. Zukertort takes a 3-1 lead over Steinitz after 4 games in this match. So he's won 3 games in a row. It's looking very good for Zukertort so far. So yeah, that's it for today, and have a good one.